Lovely to see you, Charlie, if I may call you that.
Of course.
As familiar as we are with each other.
Yeah.
Now, let's get started on Sir Keir Starmer's council tax plan.
Yeah.
This is intriguing me. He wants to freeze council tax. He's not yet in government. But at the same time, he's perfectly happy for Labour-run councils across the country to be putting up council tax bills by 5%. He's even quite happy in this great capital city for Sadiq Khan to be putting them up by almost 10%.
Well, he's saying he would freeze council tax because he understands that people are suffering in the cost of living.
But why don't Labour, if Labour councils share his ethos and he is the leader of the party, why are they putting council tax up?
Well,
and why could we trust him on this when we know that Labour councils put council tax up?
He's describing what Labour would do if they were in central government, and they would freeze council tax and they would make money available from a windfall tax. And
but
this is a recognition of what
the eating. Well, the Welsh Labour don't cut council tax, they put it up. Labour's in charge of London. They've put council tax up by 10%. The average, apparently, of Labour-run councils, of which I believe the shadow cabinet, most of them, the 2/3 of them are in these councils, they've put council tax up by 5%. So we can't really believe what he's saying on this, John.
Well, I think you can, because the reason why council tax has gone up in all of those councils over the last few years is because of the freeze and squeeze from central government. What Keir is saying is if we were in government, we would freeze council tax, we would make available the gap that would cause, because we understand what people have gone through over the last few years. It's been an absolute nightmare because of the way central government has squeezed money and forced councils, Labour and Conservative, to increase council tax. And what Keir is saying is we can remove that burden, not all of it, but we can stop it going up and we can increase the expenditure that will be available from central government because of the windfall tax. Now, it makes sense.
How much is this windfall tax paying for? Like, literally every Labour policy seems to be costed according to the windfall tax. Oh, we want to do this. The windfall tax is paying for it. We want to freeze council tax. The windfall tax is paying for it. Is this all been properly costed? Where can we see all of the calculations on this, Charlie?
It has all been properly costed.
Right.
And if you'd like to invite Mr. Pat McFadden, the Chief Secretary of the
I've had him on the show before. He's welcome. Pat, you're welcome. Come back on.
And he will explain to you that it is all properly costed. But surely, in the context of the world in which we're living at the moment, central government has got a role in relation to this. And what's more, should some of the burden be carried by the energy companies that have made a huge amount of profit from the increase in energy taxes?
Yeah, but at the same time,
Labour takes the view, and just let me finish this point, Camilla. Labour takes the view the burden should be shared, and those with the broadest shoulders should carry as much as their broad shoulders should allow.
And yet, at the same time, Labour is very aggressively pursuing their own net zero strategy. They want the government to go quicker on this. I've just been speaking to George Eustace about it. Net zero strategies just make the poor poorer. It's the same with this ludicrous ULEZ, which again a Labour mayor is foisting on people, hard-working people of this city. It costs the poorer more money. So it's not the broadest shoulders accepting this stuff, is it, Charlie? It's people who are driving white vans, it's nurses, it's junior doctors. Apparently all of their public sector pay rises are going to be wiped out by this ULEZ. So which is it? What does Labour stand for?
Let's take London to start with. If government, central government, was not so harsh on, for example, public transport, there would be much cheaper public transport. The reason why people have to use their own vehicles is because of central government's real down on London's public transport policy, for example.
But is the ULEZ going to change the world's temperature?
ULEZ is going to make the world safer over the long term.
But we all... How can we need to have a ULEZ when you're already saying that you support the policy of eradicating petrols and diesels? Ergo, if I may use that rather Jacob Rees-Moggian term. Therefore, air pollution is going to decrease at the very moment that you're charging people. Also, there are people who have got first-hand experience of ULEZ and indeed LDNs saying that it's now taking them 2 hours to do a journey that should have taken 20 minutes. All the time they're doing that, they're pumping fumes out of their cars.
Oh, no, that's completely wrong. First of all, the LDNs, the amount of fuel being discharged into the atmosphere in the LDNs is now very, very much less.
LDNs blocked 200 240 ambulances in the last...
So you're constantly changing
I know, but
your position.
My position is LDNs aren't a good thing and ULEZ isn't a good thing.
Well, I'm in favour of them both. LDNs because they reduce the amount of traffic, ULEZ because they reduce the amount of pollution. And both of those things we need to address.
But both of them affect the poor badly.
Well,
both of them disproportionately affect the poor. People trying to get around to frontline jobs, and with the ULEZ, people who can't afford to pay £12.50 a day to drive in London, even if they have no choice.
First of all, LDNs in no way damage public transport. Indeed, they make public transport easier. Secondly, in relation to ULEZ, yes, there are some people who have to pay more, but the effect overall will be to reduce pollution, and that is a worthwhile thing to do.
Let's talk about the CPTPP. Why is Keir Starmer talking this trade deal down? It's good, isn't it, that we've now in a trading relationship with 500 million people in the Indo-Pacific?
I don't know the detail of that, so be careful on what I say, but I think the point that Keir is making is that in relation to many of those trade deals, they already existed. So yes, we're in favour of lots and lots of trade all over the world, but in relation to over-claiming as a government, what further progress has been made. I think the point that Labour is making is this is being rather over-exaggerated in terms of what the change was.
Labour's talking about ever closer alignment with Europe economically, but by 2050 we understand that the European Union will account for just 1/10 of the world economy and the CPTPP will account for almost 1/4. So Labour are running after the wrong people, aren't they?
I don't think quote, running after the wrong people is the right way to look at it. Surely we're all in favour of as much trade as possible.
So you should be really heavily in favour of this CPTPP.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the point that Keir is making is we're not in favour of it. We're very, very...
He's talking it down, isn't he? He's going on about it only representing 0.08% of trade.
We're very keen to have as much trade as possible. The question is, does this represent a massive change? But like you say, Camilla, I'm all in favour of lots of trade. I'm also all in favour of lots of trade with Europe. I hope you are as well.
We all are, I'm sure. Well, we do have an FTA with the EU, don't we? Should China be blocked from membership of this CPTPP? According to Liz Truss, they should.
I'm not sure about that. I don't have a view that would, I mean, you've got Malcolm Rifkin coming. You've had George Eustice.
I'm intrigued by your view on it, Charlie.
I'm rather neutral on that at the moment because I'm not really sure what I want to express a view on things I know a little bit about, and I don't.
How about men and women? Let's discuss that.
Okay.
Now, do you agree with Keir Starmer that 99.9% of women don't have a penis?
Yes.
OK, so that 0.1%... Why are Labour sort of tying themselves slightly in knots over this? Why can't he just say that women don't have penises biologically?
Well, obviously biologically that's right, but we're in favour of trans women having rights and being protected. I completely agree with Keir and with you, Camilla. It's a very small proportion of people.
Do you agree with self-identification, though, without any medical certificate?
I do, yes.
Oh, so you're in line with Nicola Sturgeon up in Scotland?
I am in line with
Are you? And why is that? Because people find that quite a scary policy. They think that it's going to lead to situations like Isla Bryson up in Scotland being put in a woman's prison estate. They worry about that then leading to sort of men who are posing as transgender but perhaps to try and evade criminal justice system, ending up in women's toilets, women's changing rooms and all the rest of it. They're legitimate concerns, aren't they? They
are completely legitimate concerns. The reason I'm in favour of self-identification is because I think if you are, for example, a trans woman, then broadly you should be allowed to live as a trans woman. I also think that, as far as I can see, the vast majority of people who are trans women are completely genuine.
But what about those who are gaming the system? Because it does happen.
Yes, exactly. I'm sure it does. And in those circumstances, you need proper risk identification. I mean, the example of Isla Bryson, a completely unchanged man who had committed rapes very recently, the idea of that person going into a women's prison is frankly ridiculous, and you need proper risk identification to stop that ever happening. And indeed, the way a sensible prison service would operate would make sure that that didn't happen. And it's nothing to do with whether or not they've got, for example, a trans woman certificate. It's to do with what are the risks to all those other people who are in a women's prison. So I've got absolutely no problem about there being sensible means to protect women against people like Isla Bryson. Okay. But I'm sympathetic to trans women and making sure that they are protected, because people who've dealt with this issue...
But women's rights also need protecting,
Of course they do, yes, okay. And I completely accept that.
Lord Falconer, thank you very much for joining me this morning.
Couldn't have been over so quickly.
Indeed.